Well, it has happened, of course. Bitcoin has hit $100,000 for a single coin, and I am outside where it is very cold and very snowy. It is beautiful here. It's a beautiful evening. It's a beautiful night. Not just because of Bitcoin, obviously, but obviously it is the highlight of the evening. It hit $100,000 about 30 minutes ago before the time of recording. And now I think it's already up at $104,000 or so. So already making some pretty significant moves. However, obviously I expect there to be downside volatility as well. So anyway, congratulations, first of all, to everyone who has been buying Bitcoin and holding Bitcoin for a very long period of time. It has been a very quick and wild ride, up from $16,000, $18,000, barely a year and a half ago. Well, I guess 2 years ago now, but still, it went by so quick. Hard to believe that we're at $100,000. It definitely approached quicker than I thought it would come, even though I'm wildly optimistic on it, of course, as you know. Now, where are we going from here, I think is the big question people have. I'm already being asked that. Well, I think the short answer is up. I don't know how far up. I don't know how quickly up. But I do think that we're going up. And the reason's pretty simple. The higher it goes, the more interest there is. The higher it goes, the larger the network. The higher it goes, the more hash rate in the network. The higher it goes, the more continuous demand from the more kinds of adopters demanding it. Just in the last couple days alone, of course, we have Donald Trump, the next president of the United States, being very, very openly positive towards Bitcoin. Of course, we had Vladimir Putin, one of the other more powerful men in the world, talking about Bitcoin and how nobody can stop Bitcoin, right? And Jerome Powell, I believe earlier today, if not yesterday, was talking about how Bitcoin is basically digital gold, right? And so you don't have to like Donald Trump or Jerome Powell or Putin or whomever, but the point is that Bitcoin is money for enemies, right? Bitcoin is for the people you don't like, right? People, talk about how Bitcoin's number go up and Bitcoin's price go up, but I think that is the big deal with Bitcoin, and that's why I'm into it. Am I into Bitcoin for the money? Well, yeah, obviously, right? I mean, I think pretty much everyone watching this is, but the reason I care about it and the reason I talk about it and not just buy it is because I think it's really important. If I was in it only for the money, then I would just buy it, right? If I was only here for popularity or fame or whatever, it's like, this is like the nerdiest kind of little small bubble to talk about, right? It's like, I'm not in this just for the attention. I'm not in this just for the money. I'm in this for a bigger principle. And I think that bigger principle is that point, that Bitcoin is money for enemies. It's for the people you don't like. Because the problem is that every other form of money we've had in history is money only for your friends. Now, obviously, I try to be nice and I try to make friends wherever I go, but the reality is that the world needs a neutral form of money. And the reason for this is very simple, is that the world is broken and that everyone, every single person, is not perfect. None of us are perfect. None of us are perfectly moral, perfectly righteous, perfectly ethical. All of us have sin, right? None of us are perfect. And because none of us are perfect, we have a big economic problem. The biggest economic problem in the world is this problem. Is that if nobody is perfect, who do we entrust to manage the world's money? Who do we entrust to be the person in charge of the equation of the world's ledger, right? We have this beautiful division of labor, technology, progress, right? All these wonderful things. But the problem is that if we don't have a way to communicate that with each other, clear up my camera here. If we don't have a way to communicate that with each other, well, then the problem is that, you don't have an effective way to communicate. You don't have an effective way to build. You don't have an effective way to build things for other people to live, survive, thrive, and grow, right? It's just not possible. And this is the problem we have seen for thousands of years, going back and back and back into human history. No matter how far back in history you go, you can go back to ancient Egypt, you can go back to ancient Greece or Rome or Persia, you can go to the Dutch, the Chinese, the French, the Portuguese, early America even, right? All across the world, all across time. It doesn't matter the skin color, doesn't matter the religion, doesn't matter how progressive they are, it doesn't matter their political ideology, monarchy, dictatorship, democracy, republic, it doesn't matter. If you give human beings the ability to control and manipulate the equation that is the world's money, they will inevitably 100% of the time use that money for their friends at the expense of their enemies. And so Bitcoin coming along here, the whole purpose of Bitcoin is that it is money for enemies. People don't like Bitcoin because they don't like get to use Bitcoin. Maybe you don't like that the drug people use Bitcoin, right? Maybe you don't like that the people from the other country in the world that you don't like, maybe you don't like that they use Bitcoin, right? Maybe you don't like that people that were earlier to Bitcoin than you are using Bitcoin more than you, or have gotten rich more in Bitcoin than you, right? Maybe you don't like those things, right? But the whole point of the system is that it does not matter who the person is, how rich they are in the network or outside of the network, nobody can stop this thing, right? Quoting Vladimir Putin himself, nobody can stop Bitcoin, right? Quoting Donald Trump, Bitcoin is the new oil, right? Quoting Jerome Powell, Bitcoin is digital gold, right? It's like, you cannot like these guys, and that's okay. And it's funny how sometimes people think, they're saying that, oh, just because you say something means you like them. It's like, no, that's actually kind of the whole point. What I'm saying is more important if precisely I don't like those guys, right? So my point is that this is the point of Bitcoin. Yes, you can be in Bitcoin for the money. Yes, you can be in Bitcoin for the attention. Yes, you can be in Bitcoin to say, I told you so. I told you we go to 100 grand. Did you listen to me? No, you didn't. But yet here we are. The point is, it's money for enemies. And the reality is that we're only going to build more stuff, and we're only going to have a greater need in the world to have a technological neutral money for the whole world. That is what is so important for the future. And that is what, clearing up my camera again, that is the reason why I'm here talking about it. That's the reason I care so much about this. Because we are racing towards massive technological problems in the world. Right? We are already living in a period in time of history that in 30 years, 50 years, people are going to look back and say, that was barbaric. That was a crazy time, the early 21st century. Can you believe how many people died that it didn't need to die? It was crazy, right? And we don't think about it because we're used to it. We're used to thinking about people just dying in wars or in famines or from infanticide or from disease, all kinds of things, right? But it's a very real problem right here. I am privileged enough, fortunate enough, to be in a Western nation world, here in America, where it is very cold and snowy, here up north. But the reality is that 4 million people every single year die because of a lack of heat. 4 million people a year, that's a lot of people. And the world is very inefficient. The world is extremely inefficient. We are not distributing technology equitably around the whole world, right? We are not being efficient, right? If your body doesn't have a way to communicate to its different organs how to function, how on earth is the whole global economy supposed to function when barely 20% of the world is able to use a currency that's actually stable for them? It's just not possible, right? We have the whole bottom 60% of the world that is not able to build up or pick themselves up by their bootstraps because there's no bootstraps for them to pick themselves up from, right? How on earth are you supposed to build or innovate when you can't even speak the same economic and monetary language as the rest of the world, right? How on earth are you supposed to build? How on earth are you supposed to feed your families? How on earth are you supposed to think about 10 years or 50 years or 100 years from now when you can't even save in a currency that's going to last 18 months? This is the problem Bitcoin solves. That it doesn't matter what country you're from. It doesn't matter if your countries are at war with each other. Bitcoin is apolitical money, and that politicality is exactly what makes this thing valuable. And if we have a future where money is fully political, where it's only money for friends, well then that is the route of central bank digital currencies. That is the route of CBDCs. And my camera here is getting covered in snow. Oh my goodness. That is the route of CBDCs, and that is the route we desperately do not want. And that is the track we're already on, right? CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. A lot of people pretend like it's this big scary thing that hasn't happened yet. Well, the news is it's already happened. We're already here. We are already living in the CBDC world. We have been for all of human history. It's just that each new iteration of the CBDC era is getting more dramatic and more terrifying with ever greater amounts of death and destruction. And Bitcoin is here as a tool, not as a savior, not as a piece of divinity, but as a tool that humans both discovered and invented to help us prevent that problem. Because the only way to solve this problem of having neutral money for enemies, the only way to solve this There are only two ways. The first way to solve this is to remove corruption from all human hearts for all future time. That's the first option. Well, for that you need a savior, and humans cannot be that savior on our own. So the only other option, the only other remedy we have to lessen the negative consequences of this problem is to invent a system that does not require human oversight, to invent a system that doesn't matter who's in control of it or how much money they have or the color of their skin or their nation of origin or whatever technology they invent. It doesn't matter. The equation keeps going along, the algorithm keeps going along, the network remains equitable and neutral for everyone and does not care about anything else. That is why Bitcoin is important. And so where are we going from here? Well, I think we're going up. And I think that's important, not because of the price of Bitcoin, but because of human flourishing, but because we need the world to have this. The price of Bitcoin does not matter. The whole purpose of Bitcoin is create a more stable and solid foundation so that we don't collapse upon ourselves in a couple decades. Because without Bitcoin, that is where we are heading. We have been artificially manipulating energy for the last 80 years since World War II, and that will have to end. And either it is going to end in the route of a collapse, of a reset, of energy naturally finding the place it was supposed to go, right? In the same way a river naturally finds its path, global energy has to recalibrate to where it's supposed to be, right? Global economics has to recalibrate naturally. We can try to force and squeeze and pressure as much as we can. And now there's a car coming down the street here. Let me get out of the way. That's my sign that I'm talking too long and that it's been too cold here. Hello! Buy Bitcoin. Anyway, yes, I am in the middle of the street. It's so quiet. Man, I was in El Salvador 2 weeks ago, and it was beautiful and warm, and I released baby sea turtles on the black sand beach, and this is quite the difference. But anyway, the point is that, can you still get rich in Bitcoin? Yes, absolutely. But the way you get rich in Bitcoin is not by Bitcoin going up higher and higher in price. The way you get rich in Bitcoin is by understanding that without economic prosperity, without your fellow man, like, this is all worthless, right? Like, it's just all made up. Money is just all made up. It's all paper. It's all numbers. The numbers don't create any wealth. It's all just an accounting trick, right? If there was no wealth, if there was no shelter, if there was no food, if there was no energy, then none of these accounting metrics matter. None of it matters. And so you need a solid foundation. You need a solid accounting system to allow for people to build that future world. And that is how you get rich in Bitcoin, is by understanding Bitcoin incentivizes and allows for that kind of world. That Bitcoin disincentivizes war and monetary conflict and monetary censorship between nations, right? Bitcoin is money for enemies. And that is why it's worth $100,000. 100,000 American political currency units for one coin. And it's just going to keep going up because every other form of money that's money for friends is trending to zero against the money that is for enemies, right? Because nobody's going to use the money for friends that can be shut off as soon as you're no longer the right person's friend. As soon as you're no longer the right politician's friend, you get shut out for whatever reason, right? Those kinds of money are distortions from reality, and they are trending to zero against Bitcoin. So I don't know where we're going next, but I do know, in terms of political currency, we are probably trending up indefinitely forever. Indefinitely. There is no foreseeable end as long as Bitcoin remains money for enemies, and as long as enemies continue to use it with each other in a way that they don't have to kill each other in order to be able to participate in the network. Like, as long as that remains true, and it's remained true for a decade and a half, going from nothing to now $2 trillion worth of money, right? That's something that needs to be reminded here, right? Not only did Bitcoin hit $100,000, but at the same time, for the first time, Bitcoin now has a market capitalization of $2 trillion. So it's now literally a multi-trillion-dollar asset for the first time ever. So that's just as important of a milestone, in my opinion. Like, we're just going to keep trending up in terms of dollars, in terms of pesos, and in terms of every other political currency out there. And so, yes, be excited. Yes, be happy. Yes, be glad that we've gone up so much in terms of dollars. But remember that if we fail, a lot of people are probably going to die. They don't have to die, right? In the next 12 months, 4 million people, over 4 million people actually, are going to freeze. Because unlike me, they don't have a hat and a hood and a coat and home right over there in the dark, right? A lot of people are a lot less fortunate than that. 4 million people a year. 6 million people a year are dying from pollution, right? Hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, are dying from famine every single year, right? We have more than enough food. All famine, all war at this point in human history is not because of a lack of abundance. All famine today is a result of political inefficiency, of wars and conflicts and revolutions, right? All of this inefficiency has a human cost. Shutting down the world for 6 months because of a pandemic has a human cost, right? Everything has a reaction. Everything has a consequence. And the consequence of political money, the consequence of money for friends, is a human cost. And so I encourage you, don't be pricing Bitcoin in terms of political currency, of how many dollars is it going to make you. Price Bitcoin in the simple question of not how many dollars is one Bitcoin going to be worth in the future, but the question of how many fewer people how many fewer people are going to die on a Bitcoin standard than a political currency standard, right? How many people we are racing towards a massive gap between global energy needs and actual global energy production, right? That gap is death. That gap is destruction. And how quickly can we close that gap with Bitcoin? So yeah, don't ask yourself, how many dollars is Bitcoin going to give you? Ask yourself, how many lives is this technology going to save? How many deaths is this technology going to prevent? In my opinion, I think that's millions, if not tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. So, yeah, that's all I got. Nothing has changed. Bitcoin was $99,000 yesterday. Now it's $104,000. It'll be $150,000 before we know it. Then it'll be 200,000, 300,000, 500,000, a million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, 21 million, 50 million, 100 million, a billion, right? Like Bitcoin is literally going to hundreds of millions of dollars per coin because Bitcoin is going to save hundreds of millions of lives. We literally cannot price in all the future technological progress of Bitcoin because when you buy Bitcoin, you're buying the rights to technology that doesn't even exist yet. You literally cannot be buying it too late, right? If we're having this conversation in ancient Rome 2,000 years ago, by buying a share of the 21st century, how on earth can you be too late buying that in ancient Rome? You can't, because the technology hasn't even been invented yet, right? The whole hope, the whole promise riding on that future investment is the assumption we don't blow ourselves up in the process between today and tomorrow. And so that's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is a tool for savings. And if you use this tool of savings, you're going to get richer. And you're going to get richer, not just because it is going up in terms of dollars, but because it increases the probability that we're not going to blow ourselves up getting from today or tomorrow. It is the ultimate marshmallow test for you, for your family, for your future, and I think even maybe potentially the whole global economy and the whole monetary system. That is what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is money for enemies. And so I encourage you to keep that in mind. Celebrate because we hit $100,000 of Bitcoin. But next is $1 million. I tried to tell you when we were at $10,000 a coin. And here we are. We're at 100,000 now. And next we're going to $1 million. Now we're going to 10 million. Going up forever, Laura. And hopefully more people are going to have a nice warm bed to sleep at night, just like me, thanks to Bitcoin. So, enjoy your warm bed, sleep well at night, and hopefully this little project, this little orange project we're all working on is going to save some lives in the future. So, thank you for all of your effort, and tomorrow's another day.